Bom dia, boa tarde, boa noite, dependendo de onde você estiver vendo isso daqui. Sejam todos bem-vindos ao Dan, o podcast onde nós vamos misturar inglês e português. Meu nome é Bruno. Se apresentem aí vocês também.
My name is Bruno too, and I'm an English teacher.
My name is Phil. I'm an English teacher too, originally from the U.S., living in Brazil. Yeah, that's it.
Meu inglês é um pouco mais limitado. Eu aprendi inglês por conta própria e eu espero que vocês se interessem aí pelo podcast para estudarem, fazerem um pouco de listening, né?
E essa é a nossa ideia, né, do nosso podcast, é juntar uma galera que tem algum conhecimento de inglês com a galera que já tem mais experiência com inglês, para a gente conseguir mostrar as possibilidades de comunicação entre diferentes níveis e, assim, juntando um pouco do português também para que todo mundo tenha acesso a conversar aos tópicos e a informação que a gente vai estar compartilhando aqui um com o outro. E enquanto a gente tem uma conversa mais casual, né? Um formato de podcast, mas com essa pitada de aprendizado em inglês.
Esse primeiro podcast, o tema vai ser podcast, né? Então, eu acho que tá bem apropriado aí.
Tá bem apropriado para fazer jus, né? A esse formato. Que hoje em dia o que mais tem por aí na internet é podcast. There are many different podcasts nowadays on the internet. Some are more interesting than others, and I think it's a good thing that a lot of podcasts are popping up like that, because it's a different format of interview, right? It's different from that regular, like TV show interviews that we usually see on TV. And I think that's a way of us to get to know better the guests that go to those interviews, since there's no script, since there's no big, like that big channel influence on whatever is being spoken during the interview. So I guess that it's kind of a changing the way that people interview.
I think it's a really interesting form of communication, because I mean, if you think of traditional cable TV news, for example, you have that panel type of speak where people have like 60 seconds or whatever, like a very limited amount of time to speak. They usually talk in sound bites, so they don't have much to say in these types of programs. So with a podcast version, you're much more unlimited in what you can say. And yeah, I think people just want that, like a real, more authentic conversation. It's just a lot funner and nicer to accompany.
Mm-hmm. And you used a very interesting expression, soundbite, right?
Oh yeah. Do you guys all know what soundbite means?
Would you care to explain?
No. Yeah.
So basically a soundbite, and I don't know if I'm going to explain this 100% correctly, but basically it's a little snippet, like a little audio or thing that you're going to say about a designated subject. And you usually hear this expression when referring to cable TV news. So like you might have a politician go on and give an interview, and let's say, I don't know, he's advocating for healthcare, like free healthcare for everybody. So if he gives a soundbite, he has like a little speech. It's like 60 seconds or whatever, and he gives his soundbite, his little thing that he wants to say.
Como se fosse beat de som, né? Uma coisa pequena, curta. Coisa
Entendi.
breve que ele fala, certo? E
É isso mesmo.
Uma entrevista tradicional na TV pode não soar uma coisa tão honesta, né?
Sim.
Pré-planejada para entrevista. O que pode acontecer também no podcast, mas eu acho que pode falar, japas.
Sim, também pode acontecer, mas eu acho que é um pouco mais difícil, né? A pessoa acaba falando mais em podcast e tal, dando a opinião dela, se expressando mais autenticamente, né?
Uhum. E assim, até pelas perguntas que os entrevistadores desses podcasts podem ali fazer na hora, uma coisa que nem eles mesmos planejaram antes da entrevista. Eu acho que deixa o ambiente ali mais assim, casual e mais honesto para todo mundo. E você pode até ver ali, talvez, se dependendo do entrevistado, se o cara meio que tá inventando alguma coisa ali na hora, se a pergunta pegou ele de uma maneira que ele não conseguiu responder, ainda mais se for um político que esteja sendo entrevistado, então acho que isso é interessante também. Japa, you watch podcasts regularly, do you or not?
I watch just cuts. É bem raro eu ver um podcast inteiro assim.
And which podcast do you watch the most? I mean, the cuts.
Podpah and Flow.
Have you ever tried watching any other podcast?
I never try. I watched one time a cut of Venus podcast.
Cool.
They talking about estavam explicando a respeito do Egito, se eu não me engano, falando que era um país bem preconceituoso assim com as mulheres. Tipo, se você for uma mulher e não usar a vestimenta lá tradicional dos muçulmanos, os homens, tipo, assediam as mulheres e é meio que normal isso lá. Eu, tipo, fiquei em choque, mano. Falei, caramba.
That's fucking crazy, dog.
Yeah.
I was watching something on Egypt a while ago. But, you know, it's a Muslim country, so it's not that surprising. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's a Muslim country, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what is it about Flow that you think it's the one that people usually know more, in your opinion, Joe?
Bom, o que eu acho do Flow?
O que as pessoas, assim... Geralmente as pessoas conhecem mais o Flow, né?
Sim. Eu sinceramente acho eles uma referência, cara. Pelas pessoas que eles chamam lá, eu acho o Monark um cara bem simpático, assim, um cara que manja conversar bem, assim, com as pessoas. Ele parece ser um cara, como é que fala? Bem extrovertido, assim, se expressa bem e tal.
É que apesar dele falar algumas merdas de vez em quando...
Assim, ele é autêntico, né? Ele é autêntico, acho que essa é a palavra. O Igor também é um cara muito legal, eu acompanho o Igor desde quando ele tinha o canal 3K, quando ele fazia lives também no Facebook.
Sim, o Igor, eu conheço ele do Clube da Luta, né? Ele tem um canal chamado Clube da Luta, que é de jogo de luta.
Ah, verdade.
Foi, assim, a primeira vez que eu conheci ele. Depois eu vi ele no Flow, assim, do nada, e eu falei, esse cara tá aí, né? E o Podpah? What do you think about Podpah?
Eu acho um podcast muito bom também, principalmente por chamar pessoas assim que eu sinceramente não esperava chamar. Eu não tenho certeza, eu acho que eles foram os primeiros a chamarem aquele policial lá, o da Cunha, depois eles chamaram o Pedrinho Matador, tipo, nossa, eu achei muito...
O Podpah chamou ele?
Foi o Podpah? Não foi o Podpah, não, acho que foi o outro. Foi.
O Flow de um universo paralelo.
Sim.
Sim,
verdade. Eu confundi.
Explica aí a história pro Fio. Do cometa.
Okay, eu tô boiando aqui. I don't know what the fuck.
Do cometa, então, tem um cara que ele é um ex-serial killer brasileiro aí, que o cara tá supostamente catequizado agora, né? Supostamente inofensivo. Agora ele se converteu para a igreja, mas o cara, ele era um serial killer. Ele matou muita gente enquanto ele estava preso, inclusive. E chamaram ele no podcast Cometa, né?
He allegedly killed over 100 people.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
His first victim was his cousin. He
Jesus,
threw him
dude.
into a sugar cane. What's the name of that machine? It's like a machine that oh my god, what's the word? Triturar. How do you say triturar in English? Viu, pessoal? Também tem umas palavras que eu não sei.
Triturar. I'm gonna have to look that up. I mean, I guess I know what it means, but let me just try to figure this out.
Grind, like a sugar cane grinder. That's it.
Yeah, that's it. Jesus
Sugar
Christ, dude, that's crazy.
He put this arm on the machine. It's very terrible thing.
Yeah, but you know, his cousin's body didn't go through all the way, so he just finished him off with a machete.
This dude went on the podcast and talked about it.
Talked about, yeah, just as if he was talking about what he did last weekend.
Yeah.
Like emotionless, like this. This is what I do every day.
Yeah, but you know, it was normal. It's normal in the house, normal. Yeah, just like that.
It reminds me of a story that I saw. There was a documentary. I forgot exactly where, but there was this guy in Africa. I forget which country exactly, but he was an ex-general, and in the country that he lived in, he was he was a general during the Civil War, and he was called General Butt Naked because in battle. Did you hear about this? Like, he would take off all his clothes and just charge into battle, and he would kill kids and like grab their hearts and like drink the blood, like really, really fucked up shit.
Oh.
Yeah. But after he converted to Christianity and became a pastor, and he just started to live normally as a pastor after all of this happened.
And he was never really prosecuted for his crimes, right?
Never prosecuted, never punished, nothing. He was just the friendly local pastor of the neighborhood.
My God, what the fuck?
I was actually reading an article about this guy a couple of weeks ago, and I remember that you actually had told me about him. A long time ago, we were talking about whatever, and he mentioned about this guy, General Butt Naked. But yeah, it's kind of a similar story, except you know, this guy here, he was just a countryside little boy. He started killing at an early age, and he mostly killed other killers. So I mean, I don't really think he's like that bad of a person. He just you know, grew up under very specific circumstances.
Yeah, this is true.
And you know, that's what he's done.
Yeah, there's a serial killer on the loose right now, isn't there? Lazaro.
Yeah, that's the guy. He's on the loose.
What's this serial killer from DF and Goiás.
I think he's from Bahia.
Oh, but he's on DF and Goiás.
Yeah, that's what people are saying.
Oh.
But it's crazy how they still haven't caught him, and they were actually in a crossfire with him like twice, and he still managed to escape. That's fucking crazy, dog.
He's got like teams and teams of police after him, right? Just scouring the entire fucking region.
Yeah. Bom, o que falam é que ele é Opa, falou damn, hein? Olha a referência, hein? Pois é.
I wish it was intentional, but it wasn't. But
all right. I mean, it's even better that it wasn't. Fala que esse cara é um caçador, né? Era um caçador, ele sabe se virar na selva, na mata.
Sim, tem até gente aí apelidando ele de Rambo brasileiro, né?
Foi isso que eu ia falar. O pessoal não perdoa a piada, né? Faz piada com qualquer coisa. Mas realmente, o cara tá solto aí ainda. E isso aí, né? Situações aí que acontecem aqui no Brasil. Mas aí, voltando aos podcasts, nos Estados Unidos, por exemplo, eu não conheço muitos podcasts, para falar a verdade. Tem um que eu tenho visto ultimamente, chamado The Nine Club, só que parece que é mais skatistas que eles chamam para as entrevistas. Tanto que o Bob Burnquist, ele tava nesse podcast, e tipo, uma semana antes ele tava no Podpah.
Caramba.
Muito interessante ver ele falando o português perfeito no Podpah e falando o inglês perfeito no Nine Club. Tanto que no Nine Club o pessoal comenta, nossa, mas você fala português é perfeito também? Porque o seu inglês é perfeito, você não tem sotaque. E foi bem interessante assim ver esse contraste. Eu até usei esses 2 vídeos para numa aula com um aluno meu para mostrar para ele, né, como que a pessoa pode ser versátil ao ponto de conseguir aprender 2 idiomas perfeitamente, sem sotaque nenhum. Não que isso seja assim, objetivo de todo mundo, né? Acho que sotaque tem quem consegue ter e tem quem quer. Você pronunciando a palavra corretamente é o que vale. Mas eu só conheço mais esse podcast, Phil. Você teria algum outro aí que você tem em mente? That you may know?
Tem 2 que eu escuto regularmente. O primeiro que eu mais escuto é o Joe Rogan, right? O Joe Rogan
Oh,
Experience.
Joe Rogan. I totally
Joe
forgot about
Rogan.
that. Yeah, that's like the podcast that I've ever
O Flow se inspirou neles.
Exatamente, o Flow se inspirou nele.
O cara tem o maior podcast do mundo. Eu acho que em termos de tráfego, realmente. É tráfego, não é traffic? Não sei se estou falando certo.
Tráfego?
Né? Tráfego.
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 Tem tráfico e tem tráfego.
Eu não lembro o nome do podcast americano que eu vi, que chamaram o Navy SEAL que matou Osama Bin Laden. Eu só vi um cut, eu não cheguei a ver inteiro. Porque como é que fala? O canal do cut não tinha colocado na descrição de que podcast que ele tinha cortado isso daí.
Uhum. Você lembra quem que estava entrevistando o cara?
Não lembro, cara. Eu só lembro que ele tava contando a história lá. Nossa, foi foda, mano. Ele falou que na hora que ele foi matar o Osama Bin Laden, ele se escondeu atrás da esposa, mano.
Eu ouvi falar isso aí.
Nossa, mano, cara covarde da porra, velho.
Demais, velho, demais. Pra você ver como que o cara era um... Assim, não gosto de usar essas palavras, mas o cara era um rato, né?
É.
Does it make sense to say he was a rat in that sense of that he was just a coward, like hiding himself?
No. I mean, in English, whenever you call someone a rat, it's basically a snitch, you know, when someone tells on other people.
É um X9.
Exactly.
Alguém de rato em inglês, rat, significa que o cara é um X9. Sabe o que é um X9, né?
Now I do.
Como você fala X9 sem usar a gíria? É um dedurador?
Traidor?
A palavra mais comum é snitch, só que é...
Dedo duro.
Dedo duro, dedo duro.
Então, só voltando aí, esse podcast aí do Navy SEAL que matou o Bin Laden, esse eu não vi, mas eu sei que tem um podcast que é o host, né, o apresentador, é um ex-Navy SEAL, o nome é Jocko Willink. Vocês conhecem?
Pode ser esse, então.
Não, por nome eu não conheço, não.
É um cara, sabe, quando você pensa de um Navy SEAL e tipo de um Capitão América, cara bem estereótipo, cara grandão. Fortão, tipo, o cara que acorda 3 horas da madrugada todos os dias e tipo, disciplined motherfucker. Like, let's get to it. I'm gonna wake up 3 o'clock in the morning, do 1,000 push-ups, 1,000 sit-ups. Like this type of dude, you know?
But he's like that?
Yeah, no, he's exactly like that. It's interesting though. He has a very interesting podcast. And like his thing is discipline, right? Like he talks about discipline, being a man, like what, you know, according to his opinion about it, and just like, well, I can't really explain it too much because I haven't really listened to his podcast enough to really give you an explanation of it, but that's it basically. Like they talk about a lot of different things. It's a very general podcast, but it's interesting.
And what kind of guests would he invite? The ones that you know that he invited.
I'm not going to be able to explain him a lot, but if you want me to explain like Joe Rogan or some other podcast, I can do that. Like there's another one that I listen to which is Flagrant 2. I don't know if you've heard of it or not.
No, I haven't.
Do you know who Andrew Schultz is, the comedian?
I feel like I've seen this guy before. His name sounds familiar, but I can't remember his face very well.
He's a stand-up comedian. Like he he became kind of famous recently. Like basically a little bit before the pandemic, he was doing a lot of stand-up routines where he did a lot of crowd play, right? So like he would basically point out people in the crowd and start messing with them, start joking with them. But he was so good with it and so witty and so funny with it that he got really famous on YouTube. And as he started growing, like he started his own podcast as well, which is Flagrant 2. And it's kind of the same deal with Joe Rogan and this other guy, where it's a very general purpose podcast where they just talk about everything. Although with Andrew Schultz, a lot of it focuses on pop culture, so like what's going on in pop culture at the moment. But it's funny, like it's a comedy podcast, right? So essentially, it's just them kind of fucking with each other the entire time, and it's just a funny thing to listen to. Joe Rogan, on the other hand, I think it's a little bit more serious. He also brings in a lot of different guests, but like he tends to invite experts on different subjects. So like the way he describes it, it's like, oh, he learns of a new person, thinks that person is interesting. Well, fuck it, let's bring this person over to the podcast and talk to that person. So it just like, um, yeah, like academics, celebrities, authors, so a lot of different types of people.
Yeah. I mean, I had completely forgotten about him before mentioning other podcasts, but that's probably the podcast that I've watched the most. But I've watched the cuts. I've never really watched a whole podcast interview, maybe once or twice. But he does bring in a lot of high profile people. Like, I mean, I've seen Elon Musk at his podcast. I've seen I was gonna say Tony Stark, but it's Robert Downey Jr. I mean, they're basically the same person. Who else? I mean, he's talked to like scientists and astrophysicists that I can't really remember their names. But he's brought in a lot of famous people. Yeah, from all areas, from music, from the scientific field, possibly politicians. He's brought in an ex-CIA agent, and it's funny because a lot of questions that he answered to the ex-CIA agent, he kind of gave him a very like basic answer, trying to like.
Oh, like I can't imagine it.
Trying to dodge the questions.
Yeah, he was kind of dodging his questions. But now he's not on YouTube anymore, right? He's moved to Spotify.
Yeah, true. Yeah, there was the one that I most recently listened to. I'm trying to remember which one it was. I think it was Neil deGrasse Tyson, because you mentioned astrophysicist. Do you know who Neil deGrasse Tyson is?
Yeah, he was in Joe Rogan's podcast once.
Yeah, I mean, he's had him on the podcast several times, but I think he's an interesting dude. He's a really interesting guy to just listen to.
Yeah, I've watched the documentaries with him on Netflix.
Yeah.
The way that he explained things about space and outer space, it's just fascinating, and he seems to know what he's talking about. He seems to be a very smart dude. Now, is there any podcasts that you guys watched before that you didn't really like? Maybe because of the guests that were brought in, or maybe because of the host that didn't really lead podcast in an interesting way?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. Is there any podcast that you don't really like because for some reason?
I think not. Eu acho que não. Por enquanto, todos que eu assisti, eu gostei bastante. Mesmo chamando, digamos, pessoas que eu não gosto, tipo, achei legal, tal.
Falando nisso, tem um cara aí, mano, que esses podcasts têm chamado. Eu nem cheguei a ver nenhum cut dele. Aliás, cut. Vocês querem explicar o que é um cut?
Pode ser. Eu sei tal, mas pode ser.
Explica aí já o que é um cut. Um cut de um vídeo ou de um podcast.
Seria um corte de mais ou menos entre 3 a o máximo que eu vi foi 10 minutos, meio que resumindo um, uma parte específica que eles abordam um tema.
É literalmente um corte, né?
Sim,
Corte.
sim, eles acabam conversando sobre um tema e eles acabam cortando essa parte
Uhum.
para pessoa assistir somente essa parte onde eles abordaram esse tema específico.
É
Um
isso
clip.
aí. Um clip.
Yeah.
Então, aí tinha esses cuts desse cara que eu acho que ele fala sobre ocultismo, fala sobre quando vai ser o fim do mundo e tal.
Eu vi,
Mano, o
na.
Flow chamou esse cara, o Arthur Petri chamou esse cara, o Inteligência chamou esse cara. Aí, mano, assim, independente do que você acredite ou não, tem certos assuntos aí, ou certas teorias de conspiração que, mano, que tá na cara, né? Que, tipo, pô, não é verdade, cara.
Sim,
There are people that
ele.
still believe in that fucking shit, you know?
Ele falando daquele tal de Elixir lá que nem existe, mano, que você só consegue extrair da
Adenocromo, como
pessoa
é que
que
é?
tá em. É isso, adenocromo!
Mano.
Nossa, mano.
O Felipe tá perdido, né?
E como que é? O que que é isso?
Tem esse cara aí que ele. Eu não sei o que ele é, mano. Ele é um.
Ele se diz um ex-ocultista, um
Occultist,
ex-satanista.
right? Ex-occultist or something like that.
Yeah.
Ele fala que já fez parte de sociedades secretas, you know, like fucking Mason or some shit. Aí ele diz que tem um químico aí que sai das pessoas quando elas são. Das crianças, né? Um químico que sai das crianças quando elas são torturadas. E esse químico faz com que as pessoas consigam se manter novas, assim, fisicamente. E ele fala que esses famosos aí, tipo, muita gente que parece que não envelhece, né? Eles fazem isso, né? Eles sequestram crianças pra torturar e, tipo, pegar esse químico pra se manterem novas. Aí eu falo, e o que é uma porra de uma cirurgia plástica, cara?
Né?
Não existe, né?
Like Keanu Reeves and Nicolas Cage, he's never.
Beyonce, like Madonna, like Xuxa, Xuxa.
It's I think there's like an American equivalent to this too. I forget exactly what, because there's,
We copy everything from America.
but like I'm trying to remember what it was, because it's weird though. Like the past, I don't know, 10 years I would say, or maybe less. There's like a weird rise in the number of conspiracy theories out there. There's like Pizzagate. I don't know if you guys have heard of Pizzagate or not. I think it's Pizzagate, the one. Is that the one where like they're saying that like in the basements of pizza places they store babies, so celebrities and the elite can go and harvest babies, so they can rejuvenate themselves. Yeah, it's a weird
The
thing.
guy actually went up there and shot at the place, didn't he? Or tried to.
He tried to, yeah. I saw a clip of like cops that were apprehending this guy, and he was on the ground and trying to explain himself, like what he was doing, and the cops are just like, "What the fuck are you talking about?"
Yeah, it's crazy how there are so many people that will believe. I mean, there are some conspiracy theories that I have believed in the past, so I don't want to talk too much shit about that kind of people, because I guess that I was one of them at some point. But I've always doubted. I've never really believed in anything 100% like some people do. And there are some strange and weird stuff that happens in our world. I know that, but how can you be so sure that it's the way that someone is telling you, or the way that a group of people is telling you, if you don't even try to look for the information yourself? There are a lot of people that are like that don't even try to look to do some research on it. They just believe the first bullshit they see on the net or on TV or whatever. And that's not only with conspiracy theories. Eu acho que também acontece com fake news, obviamente, né?
Sim,
Política,
verdade.
ou até fofoca de amigos, familiares também. Então, é uma coisa meio que impregnada na sociedade, eu acho.
Tem uma questão que, assim, todos nós trabalhamos, né? A gente tem o nosso dia a dia, a gente está fazendo o que a gente precisa fazer, e a gente não tem muito tempo para poder dedicar, pesquisar e ir muito a fundo em vários assuntos. Então,
Sim,
se você é muito susceptível a esse tipo de coisa, é igual você falou, você pode ver um vídeo no YouTube e entrar num rabbit hole e ver vários vídeos sobre aquilo, sem muita coisa que tá indo, fazendo um ponto oposto àquilo. Então, você entra naquilo e você fica impregnado com aquela mentalidade, ó, aquela crença, e é muito difícil fazer change your mind com esse tipo de coisa.
sim, sim. É bem
É,
difícil fazer a pessoa mudar de ideia, mostrar que ela tá errada e tem até casos que ela fica compartilhando essa informação falsa. É complicado.
e eu acho que com a facilidade de você disseminar informação com a internet, isso acaba meio que afetando, né, a sociedade de uma maneira
Sim.
negativa. Afetando até, conseguindo afetar até eleições, né?
Oh, I learned about like a conspiracy theory, or not conspiracy theory, but like a weird theory recently, which was the hollow moon theory. Have you guys
Uh,
heard of this before?
Hollow moon theory.
No.
Before you explain that, would you explain the meaning of the word weird?
Yeah, sure. Weird is strange, bizarre,
That's
and
basically it, right?
yeah, not much to explain there.
Yeah, that's an easy
Um,
one.
but basically, this hollow moon theory, which I thought was very weird, and it's basically the belief that the moon is hollow, right? Like it's empty inside. Some people believe that it's because of aliens, like aliens, they carved out the inside of the moon and they built a civilization inside the moon. And the reason I found out about this recently is actually because my stepdad, right, my mom's boyfriend, he came up to me and just started talking about it. Like, oh, did you know that the moon is hollow? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he started like, no, there's these guys on the TV and they're explaining it and it makes sense. And I'm like, are you sure that it makes sense? So like I Googled it trying to figure out what this was all about. And I saw the Wikipedia page that was talking about this hollow moon theory. And apparently it's been around for a very long time. Like someone thought of it back in like the 60s or the 70s, and it's kind of stuck around since then. Although obviously this is proven, right? There's a lot of evidence out there that shows that the moon is quite obviously not hollow.
Uh,
But it's interesting to see that there are theories out there that are very easily disproven, like the flat Earth theory. Like it's really easy to show that the Earth is not in fact flat, but there are still a lot of people out there that buy into it.
Yeah, I mean, it's if you think about it, it's not that hard to uh, to create some kind of theory in your mind based on some real life rules and laws of physics or whatever, and then be creative enough to just come up with some kind of reason for something to be like that, for some some crazy never thought situation, like the moon being hollow. And then I don't know. If you're not if you don't have that time to do your own research, or if you don't really have enough resources, which is the case in third world countries. Sometimes you don't even have internet for that. And if it's something that you've heard and you start believing in it, it just makes things like harder to control, like this dissemination of fake news or false theories.
acho que a única forma do pessoal acreditar, talvez, vai ser daqui uns 20 ou 30 anos, que aparentemente vão começar a explorar a Lua para coletar, se eu não me engano, um combustível chamado hélio 3, que, se eu não me engano, é quase tão eficiente quanto o urânio enriquecido, ou talvez até mais eficiente, e é limpo, não tem resíduo.
O cara do
Eles.
Space Today falou sobre isso no podcast.
Sim, sim.
É muito...
O problema de minerar na Lua é que os equipamentos são muito pesados, né? E para levar equipamentos pesados custa muito dinheiro para tirar eles da Terra e levar até lá. Manutenção também deve ser.
Tirando que provavelmente vai ter um atrito aí, né? Entre as nações grandes do mundo.
Sim, sim.
Porque a Lua não é de ninguém.
Aham.
Moon doesn't belong to anyone.
Yeah.
So far, right? So who's gonna have the right of mining all of that resource? Is it, how do you say it? Resource or whatever?
Resources. Usually in the plural.
Resources.
Yeah, resources. Yeah. So it's probably that's why who was it? Trump wanted to create the space army or something like that.
The Space Force. Yeah.
Yeah, the Space Force. Yeah, Trump wanted to create the Space Force, which may make sense, not so far future, but kind of a stupid idea for now.
Like I would think, like I would imagine they would do something similar on the moon as they do with Antarctica, where they section it up into a lot of different pieces and like, oh, Russia can mine this part, the US can mine this part, Brazil could go here. Although I don't know how they would do that exactly, because I'm sure there are sections of the moon that are probably a lot more valuable than others. But I think it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I do think like Elon Musk's the stuff that he's developing, like the reusable rockets and everything, I'm sure that's going to drive the cost down to do all this kind of stuff. So I'm sure it's not going to be longer than 1 or 2 lifetimes until we're able to do this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I think about what's going to happen in the next decades. If an actual war will break out, or if something like that may not happen again, because there are so many deterrents nowadays, such as nuclear weapons. Like a lot of countries have nuclear weapons, so nobody's going to risk starting a war over nothing. Although there still is some strain between countries, especially between China and the U.S., Russia and the U.S. But what do you think about that? Do you think você acha que algumas guerras ainda aconteceriam no futuro?
Uma guerra mundial eu não tenho certeza, mas uma guerra tipo por petróleo provavelmente sempre acaba acontecendo. Essas guerras no Oriente Médio direto.
Até hoje tem, né? Pelo menos na Síria, tá rolando aí, né?
Eu acho que
às vezes com interferência aí da União Soviética, às vezes interferência americana também. Isso aí eu acho que sempre vai rolar, mas agora uma guerra mundial eu acho muito difícil.
Guerras mais regionais, né? Que é o que, na verdade, está acontecendo agora, né? Agora mesmo. Na África.
Ainda uma guerra nuclear também é outra coisa que, se acontecer, ferrou. Eu acho difícil, mas se acontecer...
É uma terceira guerra mundial, né, por exemplo. Acho que hoje em dia é muito mais difícil de acontecer, né, do que antigamente.
A gente vive num mundo que está muito mais conectado do que antigamente, e isso faz com que a guerra seja muito menos possível, né? Porque em vez de chegar numa guerra, tem várias medidas que todas as nações tentam tomar antes de chegar nesse nível.
Aí que eu acho que com as próximas gerações, né, de políticos e tal, acho que a tendência, como a geração dos anos 90 para cá, mais ou menos, é uma geração que já estava, talvez nos anos 2000, uma geração que já estava mais conectada um com o outro, né? Conhece um pouco mais de outros países, de outras culturas e tal. Eu acho que esse pessoal que vai estar chegando aí no poder talvez tenha uma consciência maior, né?
O pessoal talvez seja mais diplomático, né?
Sim. Mesmo em países caminho... uma política assim um pouco mais, não ditatorial, mas mais rígida, né? Ou ditatorial, dependendo do país, né? Tipo a Coreia do Norte.
O que vocês acham desse movimento mais recente, ou semi-recente, de governos mais populistas, né? Que não é só o Brasil, os Estados Unidos, tem vários países ao redor do mundo inteiro que está fazendo essa mudança para o populismo. O que vocês acham sobre isso?
Eu acho que é perigoso, né? Muito perigoso isso aí, porque isso acaba nos separando novamente, né? Isso de isso ser o nosso país, a minha bandeira. É claro que eu acho que você tem que ter orgulho do seu país e tal, mas esses movimentos populistas, eles são, digamos assim, muito egoístas, né? Tipo, eles querem, assim, focar totalmente na própria, nos seus próprios grupos, né? E, tipo, dane-se quem não se
Sim,
encaixa
sim,
assim,
apenas,
não tem
né,
nada.
nos que seguem a sua ideologia, né? E eles meio que consideram os outros como inimigos. Eu acho isso super perigoso, realmente.
Tirando que, aparentemente, esses movimentos populistas são bem anti-ciência, né? De uma certa
Sim,
maneira.
I think like
sim,
what you guys. Pode falar.
inclusive, tinham muitos bolsonaristas e trumpistas que eram é, a maioria, sim, anti-vacina, um negócio que eu achei ridículo. Pô, no
É.
século XXI, uma pessoa ser anti-vaccine, meu, eu acho inaceitável isso.
Yeah, it's like we're going back in time, you know?
Yeah,
It is a weird thing, and like because Japa talked about the anti-vax movement. At least in the United States, the anti-vax movement at first it was actually a leftist thing. I think more leftist people tended to be anti-vax, especially like in the northwestern part of the U.S., like Oregon and Washington State. So much so that several diseases that had been practically eradicated started appearing a lot, like measles, for example. A lot of people started getting measles in the northwestern US, even though we've had the vaccine for it for a long time. But it's interesting that even though it started as a leftist thing, it kind of shifted to the right. So it's a more general thing. You know, there are people from all different types of political affiliations that are anti-vax, and like with the COVID one right now, there's a lot of weird ones. Like there are people out there saying that the COVID vaccine, it's like a mass extermination program. Like the leaders of the world all got together and they said, oh, we have a population problem, so how can we kill the most amount of people in the most efficient way? Oh, let's give them a vaccine and then like activate it later on so we can kill everybody. There's ideas like that. So it's a strange thing because I kind of think that, you know, why like why the hell would you do that, and why would you want to kill the people that are being sensible and being reasonable and saying, let me get a vaccine so I can, you know, get out of this situation in the best way that I can. So it doesn't make sense to me.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's something, that's some critical thinking that I think that a lot of populist, ideologies don't take into consideration. Just thinking about why something like that would be carried out. And but there are some things that have happened in the past regarding vaccination. I'm not sure what was the name of that event, but it happened in the U.S. and these doctors they gather a group of black people to give them some kind of vaccine. They promised it would cure some of their some health issues they had, but those vaccines, they were actually filled with some like syphilis. That story, Phil. And
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I'm trying to remember the details of it, but yeah, I have an idea.
yeah, I mean, I can bring this to the table some other time whenever I have more data on that. But I don't know, maybe some people actually have that worry about vaccines coming out of nothing, being some kind of extermination, a weapon or whatever, because of things that have happened like that in the past. But that event is actually related to racism, because that happened in the 60s when racism was a big thing still. And I guess that some doctors wanted to run some kind of experiment, and they just decided to do it with black people without them knowing they were being injected with syphilis and syphilis, whatever. It was like a vaccine. But yeah, I mean, those topics are something that it's like hard to discuss.
I think it's okay to be concerned. Like, for sure, be concerned about it. Be concerned about the fact that we developed this vaccine very quickly. In the US, there's no CDC approval. Here in Brazil, we don't have an Anvisa approval. So if you want to be worried about some things, yeah, fine. But I also think that this vaccine was a very big, kind of an open project, right? Like, so several different companies were developing their own vaccine, sharing information among each other. There were independent third-party groups that were verifying and, figuring out, is this thing safe to take or not? So I think the scientific approach, in a very general sense, it relies a lot on third-party verification and just other people making sure that you're not fucking up. So I think when you're in that kind of environment, it's a lot more difficult to carry. Like, if you were to exterminate the entire world with this one vaccine, you would have to have like a very small group of people to develop something like that. Because if you had so many people involved in the development of a thing like that, someone would tell the secret, right? Someone would leak that kind of information out there. So I think it's almost impossible for you to do something like that.
Yeah. And again, if you go back in history and research about the Spanish flu, for example, you'll see that we've been through a similar situation, and that we were able to survive, that event with the same things that we're doing now with vaccines, with
and quarantine,
and that was way back in the day when like technology related to health, it was very, very like a primitive, and we were able to survive that.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe back in the day, I'm not sure, I cannot really say that, but people would trust more, what science had to offer in regards to health, and just being able to follow health restrictions.
Although I know they had a lot of protests. Like, there were several photos. Yeah, they had like anti-mask protests and like anti-quarantine protests. I mean, very similar to things that happened this pandemic now.
Oh, that's interesting to know. I've never really dug too deep into that matter, but I read something about the Spanish flu and how it started. But I think it's kind of a history repeating itself.
Yeah.
In a way. So, guys, I gotta go. So.
Okay.
But that was a pretty interesting beginning for our podcast, I guess.
Yeah. Pretty interesting. Shit. I can.
Interesting.
Não consigo acertar a pronúncia.
It's okay. It's interesting.
Interesting. Yeah, it's very interesting. Shit.
Okay. Interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
As they say,
very interesting conversation with a lot of teams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we talked about a podcast. A gente falou sobre guerras, sobre
teorias da conspiração.
Mas é isso. Conseguimos, né? Meio que misturar aí o inglês com o português de uma certa maneira.
Sim, sim.
E vamos ver o que acontece da próxima, né?
Bora ver aí se o resto do pessoal aparece nos outros episódios.
Aí vai ser mais interessante. O Marcos aí, né?
Sim, o Marcos sempre com boas piadas e sempre puxando assunto também com temas interessantes. O William também, talvez.
Ele que teve a ideia, né, do nome.
Ah, verdade. Nome muito interessante.
E ele foi o primeiro a comentar sobre, podia fazer um podcast, né? Que a gente tava conversando um dia e tal.
Aham.
Aliás, o Phil também já comentou comigo de fazer um podcast. Várias pessoas falando comigo já. O Edson também, de fazer um podcast. Mas cada um com uma pegada diferente, né? Aí vamos ver o que a gente consegue fazer com isso que a gente tem aqui em mãos.
Vou salvar o vídeo, o arquivo aqui, aí eu mando lá no grupo. Aí seria
certo.
interessante todo mundo dar uma olhada, né? Para passar um feedback do que dá para melhorar, o que dá para
Sim.
fazer diferente ou manter a mesma coisa.
Sim. Aí vai ter gente para dar as opiniões. E eu vou rever também esse podcast que a gente conseguiu gravar aqui. E vamos discutindo aí sobre o que a gente pode melhorar.
Beleza.
All right, guys. So that's it. Thank you very much for the conversation. I had a great time talking about all those topics with you guys.
Yeah, it was cool.
A gente se vê da próxima aí. Vocês querem adicionar mais alguma coisa aí?
Não, acho que não. Só isso mesmo.
Tá certo então.
Então é isso aí, pessoal. Falou.
Aí, família. Falou. Talk to you guys later. Take care.
See you later.